Just want to let you know, right off the bat, there will be spoilers for the entire season of WandaVision, right up to and including the finale. This is your chance to exit out if you don't want it spoiled. Okay, so I finished watching the final episode of WandaVision, and unfortunately, I've got to say I was left disappointed. Not because I had a fan theory that didn't pan out, or because a character didn't make an appearance. No, my complaints are purely story-based. I think I should make it clear, though. Nothing about the show was inherently wrong. It was a really great piece of storytelling, and if you enjoyed every second of it, and were completely satisfied with how it ended, I'm happy for you. It's not my intention to say that you can't like it. For me, though, I was not satisfied by how WandaVision went, and this is because of my expectations for the show going into it. I didn't want it to go in the direction it did. I remember when the first 2 episodes came out and there were some complaints with them. It might have been because some people didn't like the show's slower approach. However, these episodes had me totally hooked. The mystery of everything had me completely enthralled. I loved the total immersion of the sitcom style, even though I haven't watched the shows they're based on. Episode 3 kept this trend going strong, and I appreciated them pulling back the curtain for episode 4. Episodes 5 and 6 were pretty good as well. But then episode 7 happened. This is where my interest in the show really began to wane. First of all, I don't think they went in as fully as they could have with the Modern Family style format, especially compared with how faithfully they kept the appearance of previous eras. It's a minor nitpick, though. My real issue with the episode was... It's been Agatha all along. Yeah, not a fan. And I get this is probably a controversial opinion. A lot of people seem to really like her. But honestly, Agatha Harkness is my main issue with the show as a whole. No offense to Catherine Hahn, she gave a great performance. It's the character itself I have a problem with. Let me break down the reasons why. First of all, in my mind, her purpose in the story is not solid enough. It seems like the main point of her is just so the writers could get one over on the audience with a plot twist. Which, of course, they didn't, since fans were predicting her reveal for weeks beforehand. Of course, you can see the other role she served was as the main villain. The thing is, though, they already had a good antagonist, and I don't think adding another was necessary. I'll get to that more later, though. Second, she breaks the internal logic of the universe, and overall makes no sense whatsoever. That may seem like a bold stance, but hear me out. Her magic is so dumbfoundingly out of place within the MCU, I honestly do not know how it made it past the editors. We already have sorcerers, and with them, a fairly well-defined magic system. But for some reason, they decided to abandon it completely in favor of making up their own on the fly. It frustrates me how close they were to keeping Agatha within that system, but didn't. All they had to do was use the term sorcerer, or connect it to Doctor Strange's magic. They could have explained it as both sorcerers and witches draw on the same source of power, but in different ways. Like cultural differences between countries. But no. They could have used visual similarities, taking the intricate designs of the Strange magic and integrating them into Agatha's visual effects. But no. Literally just making the magic the other witches were using the color orange, like a lot of the Strange magic, would have done so much in making their worlds feel integrated. But no. Agatha's magic feels in diametric opposition to Strange's, and in a story already pushing the limits of how crazy it could get, having 2 different magic systems broke it for me. Yeah, I know she name-dropped the Sorcerer Supreme in episode 9, but it was too little too late. Another complaint I have is her power level is indecipherable. She says the line,
Years of study to achieve even the smallest convincing illusion.
But within the Strange magic system, we've seen someone go from 0 to hero within the span of a few months, maybe longer depending on how you interpret the final battle. Agatha's been alive for like 400 years. If she'd spent 200 at Kamar-Taj, she'd probably be Sorcerer Supreme by now. It makes no sense. Here she is, complaining about how she's so weak when there's a magic school that's really not that too difficult to find, teaching people how to conjure magical weapons and warp dimensions. Maybe ask around a little, Agatha. And this whole I'm so weak shtick doesn't even hold up for the rest of the show. By the end, she's casting magical spheres left and right, ensnaring 2 superpowered kids and disappearing into thin air. I wouldn't be surprised if she could go toe-to-toe with Doctor Strange. So which one is it? A bitter, jaded witch with a few sleight-of-hand type tricks? Or one of the most powerful magical threats the Avengers have ever seen? Finally, I extremely dislike what Agatha did to Wanda's origin. So what, now they're saying she was born magic? What the hell? This isn't Harry Potter. I don't want magical bloodlines. One of the things Doctor Strange clearly established is family lines are irrelevant. With enough patience and practice, basically everyone could do magic. Some will be more gifted, yes, but you don't have to be born with magic flowing through your veins or anything. I get the MCU is full of retcons and all, but the original explanation of how she got her powers was logical. But now they've muddled it so much. You know why? Because Pietro also got his powers from the Mind Stone. What, you're telling me he was born with a speedster gene or something, enhanced by the stone? Because that's what they're saying from Wanda. It makes the origin of Pietro's powers so confusing. But because he's dead, I'm sure Marvel won't ever bother to explain how they fit in. Sorry, I didn't mean to go off so much. It's just frustrating how out of place her character seems. My gripes with Agatha aside, I thought there were some amazing parts of WandaVision. The visuals were stunning, the acting was on point, and there were great character moments. And I wanted to love every aspect of the show. It seemed like they were just going to be telling a close, intimate story of the two of them, set through the lens of the sitcom world, which I was so on board for. Instead, it gets derailed by a magic subplot that is maybe introducing mutants, maybe making her a villain, or maybe something else. And I don't think the show needed all those extra elements. So, I'm going to propose a reworking of WandaVision. Not a rewrite as such, because I think basically all the elements are still great. Just a few tweaks to make the story more streamlined, and, to me, more personal and emotional. Bear in mind, I have absolutely no clue how WandaVision's effects are going to play out in future Marvel projects. The way things went made it pretty clear the ramifications from the show are going to play out in the upcoming movies. They've clearly got some magic-based stories in the works. All the setup was another gripe I had with the finale, but that's besides the point. The main thing is, I'm sure my changes couldn't actually work without messing everything else up, but let's just pretend for a minute. This is my vision, for what I believe would make the best contained story in what I'm calling WandaVision Take 2. In case you hadn't guessed, the major change will be cutting out Agatha Harkness's role as antagonist from the show. With her goes all the setup of magical shenanigans and the world-breaking logic. So, the first few episodes remain basically the same. You can cut Agnes, or keep her around as a fun Easter egg, I don't care. I'd just remove her more sinister lines so the audience wouldn't be expecting any reveal from her. Same thing goes for Pietro. He can stay or go. Obviously, we won't be introducing mutants, so it doesn't really matter. You could explain it away as simply as Darcy does, as a recast, only around for the show. It's only around episode 7 where things really start to change. Now that we've cut Agatha, there's some extra screen time to play around with. And to me, it's obvious who we give it to. Everyone's new favorite trio, Monica, Darcy, and Jimmy. Despite the show being heavily focused on Wanda and Vision, I was pleasantly surprised with how smoothly these characters integrated into the plot. But by the finale, they'd been shoved aside in favor of a typical MCU final fight. There were so many great moments with the three, and then they barely got any resolution in episode 9. So let's change that. Specifically, let's focus in on Monica. Jimmy and Darcy can have more screen time as well, but I think Monica is the key character here. The main idea I want to introduce with her is that Wanda is not alone. At the heart of the show was the idea of working through her grief. It's very important thematically, and something I want to keep intact and expand upon. Instead of the world outside the Hex being completely devoid of anything positive, I want Monica to provide a lifeline for Wanda, a person who will care about her and connect with her. It's kind of hard to explain, but I want her to be the reason for Wanda to hope again. No, Monica won't be immediately close to her, but she is someone who will be there for Wanda. This was an area the show really whiffed, in my opinion. Monica fights for and defends Wanda throughout all the episodes she appears in, just as Wanda fought and defended the world. But in the final episode, basically the only thing she gets back was, "That was pretty chill of you. I'm a head out now." What? How is that satisfying? Wanda and Monica, despite having never met before, are a really interesting pair. They have experienced loss in two very different ways. Monica was forced to say goodbye to Vision under the cruelest possible circumstances, while Monica lost the most important person in her life without even a chance to say goodbye. Each one suffered in their own way, and I think that's the foundation for a powerful connection. Jimmy and Darcy are less connected, and as such I don't think they would get quite as close to Wanda, but that doesn't mean they still can't play a role in her healing. I don't have any exact ideas for them, but I'm sure you could work them in. So, now that we've got a rough outline for how these three will play into the story, let's get into some specifics. Episode 7 can start out basically the same, aside from Agnes not kidnapping the twins. Vision can still be separated, and it could be it's actually Wanda trying to keep him away, just as they originally suggested. Wanda's adrift and losing control, as the episode had it, and she wants him to stay away. But let's focus back on Monica. After forcing her way into the Hex, she goes to talk to Wanda, just like she did the first time. Her objective is to warn Wanda of Hayward's plan to attack, and try to convince her to let down the Hex. The start of the interaction goes basically the same. However, this time, instead of forcing her away and going with Agatha, she actually starts to listen. Monica does her best to connect with her, telling her about losing her mother. And for a moment, it seems like Wanda might come around to her view. But then something goes wrong. Either Monica says the wrong thing, or S.W.O.R.D. launches an attack, I don't know, however you want to do it. Wanda jolts out of her peaceful state. Her eyes start to glow red, and magic starts to form in her hands. Monica tries to reason with her, but it doesn't work. Wanda steps forward and says, "You think you know my pain?" Then, she blasts Monica with her energy. This is not the same as episode 3, though. Her attack does something entirely different. Because despite my issues with the final stretch of the show, I actually loved most of episode 8. It filled in so many gaps and important moments in Wanda's history, and it's definitely a sequence I want to keep in the show. So instead of launching her out of Westview, Wanda sends Monica spiraling through her memories. The same way Agatha opened the doors to the past, Wanda does it with her raw power, showing Monica all the key moments. This helps Monica to better understand Wanda and connect with her. After going through the memories, she emerges, shaking and breathing heavily. Wanda is standing there, tears running down her cheeks. I would like the visuals to imply she was also seeing the memories as Monica moved through them, maybe the fading of her power or the reflection of one of her loved ones in her eyes. Monica catches her breath and says something like, "I had no idea." With deepened empathy, she can try again to talk her down. Now, at this point, you may be wondering where the source of conflict is going to come from. Or not, because, like I said earlier, we already have one antagonist in the show who is doing a pretty good job of filling the role, Director Hayward. I don't love that they did the big bad behind the government agency again, but it works. So instead of the white vision powering up in the mid-credits scene, it happens within either episode 7 or 8. We get a little more time establishing its capabilities and objective, which is to kill Wanda Maximoff. And if we want to go full supervillain, we'll say Hayward also programmed it to destroy Westview, in order to leave no trace of Wanda's magic or something. It doesn't have to be that reason specifically, but something like it. Moving into the finale, we have all the pieces in play. I think Monica, fresh out of the memories, should still talk to Wanda, and start to sway her towards the idea of letting down the Hex. But she can't manage it. Wanda still refuses, maybe saying she'd rather die with her family than face Hayward and the outside world again. This is where Vision comes in. Not White Vision, but the Vision that Wanda created. He's put all the pieces together, and now he's going to talk to her. Their conversation will be a critical moment in the show. Because in the original finale, she said Vision is the piece of the Mind Stone that lives in her hope, and her love. And while all those things make sense, in my opinion, there's one missing. Vision is also the embodiment of Wanda's heroism, of her desire to do the right thing. In a world she created to cater to her whims, Vision is her conscience, the better part of her that knows it's wrong. He represents her internal struggle between what she wants and what she needs to do, which is to accept what happened. Not necessarily move on or be instantly better, but to accept. And as such, only he can get through to her. Side note here, another thing that kind of irritated me about the finale was their goodbye. Don't get me wrong, it was emotional and beautiful. But do you know what made their Infinity War farewell so heart-wrenching, and more importantly, unfair? It was how rushed it was. How they barely had time to put into words everything they wanted to say. Then, in the finale of WandaVision, they pull the same crap again. The two of them barely have enough time to say goodbye. While it's emotional, it's treading over the same beats again. Not to mention pretty damn unfair to the characters. She literally has control over their reality. Just because the hex is shrinking doesn't mean Wanda can't hold it off for a bit longer. Why not give them a few more extra minutes? I get making it rushed carries more tension, but honestly, I don't care. Giving them more time equals a greater sense of closure, which is essential in a story about her grief. We already got the pain of things left unsaid. This time, please, for the sake of Wanda's healing, let them say everything they need to. So, in my version, that's what would happen. They would talk. The two of them could walk around town, and he could essentially talk her to the point of acceptance. I can't think of the powerful dialogue Vision would deliver at the moment, but it would be very moving. He would remind her she is a hero, that she needs to do what is right. And after a long debate, Wanda would finally be ready. Here, there's a bit of a split on what I think could happen. Both could work, and each has its own strengths. First, Wanda could say her goodbyes to Vision and the kids right then and there, before permanently tearing down the hex. This would result in an even more emotionally charged final battle. Or, we could save the goodbyes for after the final battle, and just have her exit the hex for now. I did like how the show ended on their goodbyes, and I think it could work here as well. For now though, let's just go with the first option. Vision and Wanda finish their talk, including a proper goodbye, where they get to say everything they want to. She'd probably say goodbye to the kids as well. I know that may sound a little flippant, but to me, the heart of the story is Wanda and Vision's relationship. It's where I want to keep the focus on. Then she tears down the hex. With tears streaming down her face, she watches as it all fades away. Westview glitches out heavily, and the energy starts to recede back into her. The whole time, Vision is holding her hand. And instead of just fading away, we see his energy flow back into Wanda. It's a minor point, but just a nice visual reminder he'll always be with her. The music swells and the hex finally disappears. All that's left is Wanda and Monica, standing in the middle of a decrepit town. Monica puts her hand on Wanda's shoulder and says, "Thank you." Wanda's too overwhelmed to say anything, and only nods. After a moment, she regains herself, and asks about where Hayward is. It's at this moment that White Vision descends out of the sky, with his objective to kill Wanda. There's some sword trucks in the distance, closing in on the pair. Now, you may be wondering why I took the other Vision out of the equation before he got to fight his bleached doppelganger. Well, don't get me wrong, the Vision versus Vision fight was cool, and the Ship of Theseus debate was a neat way to end it. But there wasn't much more to it. We weren't rooting for White Vision, so his struggle with identity wasn't too compelling. Not to mention, Marvel's done the two characters with the same powers trope so many times. To me, it's more powerful if Wanda herself has to face off with this imposter, especially in these new circumstances. She's raw, just having said goodbye to her kids and the love of her life. Her loss is still very much on the surface. What's a more morally draining and heartbreaking first mission for her than fighting not Vision? But she's changed. She's not the same broken person who made the hex. The talk with her Vision opened her eyes, and she's reached a semblance of peace with her loss. Not Vision is a test, yes, but one she's well equipped to face. The final fight is suitably epic. In this version, we get to see what it looks like when Vision and Wanda go toe-to-toe for an extended period of time. To throw a few curveballs in there, we could have Hayward activate parts of White Vision's memories to weaponize against Wanda. Meanwhile, Monica could be dealing with the arriving sword agents. She'd go full photon, using her powers to fend off the attackers. The hints of her abilities were cool, but I think we need at least one scene where she gets to use them fully. I'd also say Jimmy and Darcy should be involved as well, at least for a little bit. This goes on for some time, and after a while, Wanda would gain the upper hand and tear apart the fraud with a blast of power and a one-liner. The rest of the episode would basically be wrap-up. Hayward would be arrested, the FBI would arrive, and so on. The trio would be there for Wanda, and I think she should take the pieces of fake Vision and bury them underneath the foundation of their house. They could hold a small funeral, just the four of them, like Wanda wanted, a final chance to say goodbye and start on the road to healing. Anyway, that's basically it. My idea for WandaVision, take 2. Now, this was just a rough outline. There's a lot more gaps that need to be filled, and I'm sure there's many things I missed. For example, the townspeople. In a universe where immoral actions are punished, I don't think Wanda should get away scot-free for what she put them through, but I can't think of a good way to work in a punishment. I really hope you enjoyed this pitch. I'm not claiming this was a better piece of storytelling, or in any way trying to demean the hard-working individuals who created WandaVision. These were just my ideas for my dream version of the show. But believe me, I'm thrilled we got a show like this, and while I don't love all of it, I'm still so excited to see where it leads. Special thanks to my friend Parker who helped me come up with some of these ideas. Let me know what you think of this rework in the comments. I hope you have a great day, and thank you so much for watching.